they are beyond help.
Yes.
A newly released 911 phone call is revealing details about what may have led up to a murder-suicide of a husband and wife out in Utah last month. It details the moments the couple were discovered dead in their home by one of their own children. We'll break down this case with Utah criminal defense attorney Sky Lazaro. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So we have this call that comes in on June 20th at around 12:40 in the afternoon out in American Fork, Utah. That might ring your ears, by the way, because you might remember that location from our Ruby Frankie, Jody Hildebrandt coverage here on Sidebar. But putting that to the side, here a caller is saying he found 57-year-old Olin Johnson and his wife, 52-year-old Carolyn Johnson, both shot to death. And the 911 caller is not identified by name or otherwise, other than the fact that he references the victims as being his dad and mom.
I think my dad killed my mom and then he killed himself.
Making clear that this was the couple's son, one of 6 children in the Johnson family. And based on the investigation, it appeared that Olin had shot and killed his wife, Carolyn, moments before fatally shooting himself in the couple's $1.34 million home. Married apparently 32 years. Now, the son tells the dispatcher that he does see a gun in the home, and he reveals a little bit about the couple's past.
Have they been violent? Do they have a history of fighting, or?
No, but there's been a lot of drama recently in the household just within the past 4 days.
The son didn't quite expand upon the, quote, drama that had been happening in the days leading up to this incident, but he did refer back to a possible domestic dispute between the couple in the past.
There was one instance of like a year or two ago that I think my mom, I don't know, my dad was chucking stuff around the house. He went to jail for a little bit, but nothing like, I don't think like contact physically.
The day after this couple was found, police classified the killing as a murder-suicide. And what's also bizarre about this situation is that according to the New York Post, in the days leading up to this tragedy, there's really no other way to describe it, it's a tragedy, Olin had posted a kind of worrisome caption to his now privatized social media page. And it was next to a photo of himself on a motorcycle. He wrote, quote, "No matter how crappy a person I am, motorcycles always love me back. Oh, and skiing. Skiing loves me too." Now, police haven't revealed a potential motive in the shooting. They're continuing to investigate. According to Olin's LinkedIn profile, he's the owner of Simtech Modular, which manufactures modular panels for force-on-force training for paintball and airsoft. It also lists he previously had experience in the small arms industry, doing large projects such as firing ranges at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Both he and Carolyn were graduates of Brigham Young University, where she was an adjunct faculty member in the School of Music. And there's a GoFundMe page that has been created by friends of the family. It's raised nearly $90,000. In a joint obituary, it describes Olin as always calm, thoughtful, kind, and professional with a compassion for those in need. And then regarding Carolyn, it says that Carolyn filled her life with beauty, faith, optimism, and a quality of life that led others to gravitate to her, and that Carolyn's life was marked by her devotion to her family and her passion for music. But it also states, as we cope with immense sorrow, mourning the loss of Carolyn, our beautiful mother, daughter, and sister, we also mourn for Olin, despite his actions. We are overwhelmed with love and support from the community and express our deepest appreciation and gratitude. If you or someone you love is in crisis, please reach out for help. Hey, let me just take a quick pause from Sidebar to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's Law&Crime YouTube Takeover, America's largest personal injury law firm. Look, if you're in that position where you're hurt and you need legal representation, this may be the firm you want in your corner. Specialists in this area, a firm that has secured verdicts and settlements in the multi-millions across this country, a firm that doesn't settle for lowball offers, a firm where there is no upfront fee, you only pay them if you win, and a firm that makes the whole process so easy for their clients, because from starting your claim to uploading documents to talking to your legal team, it can all be done from your smartphone. So if you're ever been injured, you can easily start a claim by going to forthepeople.com/YouTube takeover. All right, so joining me right now is Utah criminal defense attorney Sky Lazaro. Sky, thanks so much for coming on. What a case. I think it's really plagued by how much we don't know than what we do know. What does an investigation look like this now, considering the fact that, you know, you have what appears to be a murder-suicide, there's no criminal defendant. What do the police look for right now?
You know, I don't know how much they're going to do on these. These are always tragic situations. Obviously, you can't charge someone who's deceased, and I don't know exactly how much of an investigation they'll actually do into what happened or why it happened, other than to make sure, you know, any of those kids are you know, placed safely if they're minors or have, you know, resources available to them.
How often do you see cases like this? By the way,
I think
apparent murder-suicide, 32 years married? Have you seen anything like that?
And what is it, 6 kids? Just awful. We see these every so often. I think this happens. I actually looked through some, you know, criminal history that's available in Utah to see if there was anything prior. There was one incident from a few years ago that had been dismissed. You know, I think these are unfortunate. You know, it's hard to know what's going through people's minds at the time that they would do this and leave their family and, you know, take the other spouse with them.
Talk to me about that idea that, and we've talked about this so many times here on the show, that when someone commits a crime or someone allegedly commits a crime and we look at their history and we say, well, how come they weren't locked up? How come this wasn't prevented? It seemed there were warning signs. When you see something, again, an alleged horrific act of domestic violence here, a man accused of killing his wife and then turning the gun on himself, why is it difficult to play Monday morning quarterback with that?
I think in a lot of these cases, there is no history. You know, maybe there was some contention in the marriage. Maybe there were financial problems. You know, maybe somebody has, you know, sort of a midlife crisis. But, you know, I think we see these just as often where someone had no warning signs as, you know, maybe someone who has a history of domestic violence. Probably actually more often, there are no, you know, court, you know, things that we can look at or criminal history factors that we can look at that would explain it. I think these are really inexplainable acts, and how people get to this place is kind of beyond most of our comprehension, I think.
It also strikes me that, and I've covered this so many times, where one of the defenses in a criminal case when we have a trial is the defendant is a law-abiding citizen. They have not committed a crime in their 30 years, 20 years. They have never committed, but it only takes that one time, right? It only takes that one time for somebody to not only break the law, but so many times I've seen commit the worst crime of all, murder.
Yep, absolutely. I've represented countless people with no criminal history at all, and just, you know, wrong place, wrong time, bad day, you know, the perfect storm of events that lead to, you know, something along these lines or something else. And it's a hard argument. You know, obviously it's factored into sentencing if people don't have a criminal history, but it certainly doesn't make them immune or excusable for, you know, committing whatever acts that they have.
What do you make of what is a really harrowing 911 phone call seemingly made by the couple's son?
Awful. I mean, I listened to that and my heart broke for that poor kid. I cannot imagine what it would be like to walk in and find and find that scene, and listening to it, where the 911, caller or operator asked if there was they were beyond help and whether or not there was a weapon there. And, and then he kind of in comment passes, there's been some drama. I mean, who knows what that is? Maybe she wanted a divorce. Maybe, we can speculate all day long as to what was going on in their personal lives. But I mean, that call is just heartbreaking to me as an attorney, and as a parent.
Yeah, no child should ever have to see that, and have to call police to report that. Do the children in cases like this, do they need legal representation?
I don't think that we're going to see any sort of criminal type investigation. I think what we may see is something done by the medical examiner's office just to close the case. So I don't foresee representation as it relates to a criminal court. I don't know what these, there may be some estate planning type issues to close the estate. But
I was wondering if they need some sort of liaison between them and police, because I'm sure, look, police will be looking into this somewhat. I mean, the idea of the circumstances surrounding this, where the gun came from, did anybody know about this, something like that. So do victims in this case, do they need a legal liaison between the family and law enforcement?
I usually advise people when they call me and ask about it that I think it's always better to have an attorney who can have those conversations. One, there's a lot of emotions, and these are really hard conversations to have. And the other thing is as you know, when the police start looking into things, they may not stop with just, the questions they're asking. There might be other stuff that comes up. People have other things going on in their lives and other histories. So I usually tell people, if the police are calling you for any reason, even as just a witness, I think you're always better to have counsel and somebody who knows the system, who can, one, help explain it to you and help you navigate through it, but also make sure that they can protect you if there are any issues that arise from that investigation.
In these kinds of cases, do you ever see litigation coming up as a result of it, or any kind of, whether it's, I don't even know what it would be, in the sense, we talked before about whether or not something like this was preventable in any way. Is it any kind of, if anybody's family wants to sue, and again, I don't even know what it would be, but do you see any kind of litigation that comes from these kinds of cases?
I've seen some wrongful death litigation in the civil sense come out of these from, one side of the family, if her family is upset, usually in that context, there's some sort of divorce proceeding where, there's an issue as to, what's going on with assets. As far as preventable, and this came up, there's been a couple of cases actually here in Utah that are different than this, and the fact that there was an individual that was paroled, had a long history of violent offenses, and then is alleged to have murdered his girlfriend. And so in those cases, there's been some talk, and nothing's been filed as far as litigation, maybe against the Board of Pardons and Parole or the Department of Corrections. Should this person have gotten parole at his last hearing, given his criminal history and the fact that he was a violent offender. But the hard part with these, and I think judges wrestle with this in every domestic violence case or anybody with a history of domestic violence, is nobody has a magic ball. There's people who can get in an argument, the police get called, they're never going to be in trouble again. It was just something that got out of hand. And then, there's times when there's a history and then, things escalate to this level. So I think, we never know who's going to be the one. And I think that's what gives judges pause sometimes, or, the Department of Corrections pause when they're talking about, should we release someone?
Really difficult case. Our thoughts go out to the family who have to go through this and experience this and try to move past this incredibly difficult situation. But Sky Lazaro, thank you for coming on, talking to us about this case and breaking it down for us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse. Always good to see you.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.